My name is Eleanor Kingsley. I'm 63 years old. 4 days before everything changed, I believed I had raised 3 decent people. 4 days later, I sat alone on my kitchen floor after all 3 of my children walked out of my house. 20 minutes after the front door closed behind them, my phone rang. What my doctor told me on that call changed everything. Not only about my health, but about my children. And the strangest part, if that phone had rung 20 minutes earlier, I might have spent the rest of my life believing a lie about the people I loved most. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, where family secrets come to light and quiet strength wins the day. If stories about truth, resilience, and unexpected justice speak to you, don't forget to subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Now, let me tell you exactly how I discovered who my children really were. I live in Savannah, Georgia. In the same house my husband Thomas and I bought 31 years ago. It's nothing extravagant. White siding, a wraparound porch, old oak trees covered with Spanish moss. The hardwood floors creak in familiar places, and every sound still reminds me of Thomas. He died 6 years ago. Heart failure. Fast enough that neither of us truly understood we were saying goodbye, until it had already happened. After he was gone, the house became much quieter. Not because my children stopped loving me, at least that's what I believed. Because life gets busy. People have careers, families, responsibilities. At least that's what mothers tell themselves when visits slowly become phone calls. And phone calls become birthday texts. I have 3 children. Holden is 30, successful commercial real estate broker, confident, polished, the kind of man who walks into a room expecting the best chair without realizing he's doing it. Tessa is 33, marketing consultant, smart.beautiful.com. She can make criticism sound like encouragement and manipulation. Sound like kindness. My youngest Dashiell is 30. He works somewhere in finance. Every time I ask exactly what he does, I get another complicated explanation involving investments, portfolios, and markets. As a little boy, he checked every door twice before bed. Now he checks numbers instead. Then there's Hazel, my granddaughter, 17 years old. Tessa's daughter. She's the only member of my family who calls me simply because she wants to hear my voice, not because she needs advice, not because she forgot a recipe, not because she wants money. She just calls. Sometimes we spend 40 minutes talking about flowers, or books. Or what the sky looked like after school. Simple conversations. The kind people rarely appreciate until they're gone. Thomas and I weren't wealthy. He sold insurance. I worked as an accountant for almost 40 years. We paid mortgages, packed school lunches. Missed vacations so we could afford braces. Bought Holden his first used car. Paid for Tessa's college after working overtime every tax season. Helped Dashiell through tutoring when anxiety made school harder than it should have been. Nothing glamorous. Just ordinary love. The kind built one grocery trip, one school concert, one birthday cake at a time. I believed ordinary love lasted forever. I believed children remembered sacrifices. Looking back, I realize parenting is mostly faith wearing work clothes. You spend 18 years planting seeds, then decades wondering what actually grew. 4 days before my children abandoned me, I sat across from Dr. Castellan at Savannah Memorial Hospital. She turned her monitor toward me. There has been significant growth, she said quietly. I stared at the gray image on the screen. Meaningless shadows, shapes I couldn't understand. But I understood her voice. Doctors develop a certain tone when they're trying not to frighten you. Unfortunately, numbers had been my entire career, and I knew exactly what careful voices usually meant. The diagnosis is serious. We'll discuss treatment. There are options. No one said the word terminal. No one mentioned months, but they didn't have to. Some truths arrive without being spoken. I drove home with all 4 windows open, even though October air had already turned cool. I needed wind against my face, needed movement, needed proof the world hadn't completely stopped. When I pulled into my driveway, I couldn't make myself get out of the car. For 11 minutes, I simply sat there, looking at my own front porch, wondering how many more autumns I might still see. The first person I called wasn't one of my children. It was my neighbor, my best friend, Margaret Dubose. She lived 3 houses down. We'd survived widowhood together. She answered on the first ring. "Eleanor," I couldn't even finish saying hello before I started crying. She listened without interrupting. When I finally stopped talking, she spoke softly. "Don't call the children tonight. Sit with this first. Let it belong to you before it belongs to everybody else." She was right. I know that now. But mothers don't always make decisions with wisdom. Sometimes we make them with hope. I wanted my children. I wanted someone to tell me I wasn't carrying this alone. So that evening, I called all 3. Holden answered almost immediately. "Mom, I'll be there tomorrow morning. I love you. Don't worry." Tessa answered before the second ring had even finished. "I'm driving over tonight. I love you so much." Dashiell booked a flight before I even finished explaining what the doctor had said. "I'll be there tomorrow. I love you." 3 children, 3 promises, 3 identical words. I remember sitting on my couch afterward thinking, Thomas, we raised them right. For one beautiful evening, I truly believed that. I had no idea those 4 days were about to become the most expensive education of my entire life. Holden arrived the very next morning, right on time. He stepped out of a black SUV, wearing an expensive sport coat, polished shoes, and the same confident expression he'd worn since he was 25. He hugged me tightly. Too tightly. Then, over my shoulder, I watched his eyes drift past me into the house. Not toward me. Toward the hallway. Toward the antique writing desk that had belonged to Thomas's mother. The desk where we had always kept important papers. The movement lasted less than 2 seconds. Most mothers probably wouldn't have noticed. I spent 40 years reading people across accounting tables. Tiny things matter. "How bad is it really?" he asked after we sat in the kitchen. "Stage 4, I answered quietly. "They're calling it advanced." He nodded. Slowly, not like a son hearing terrible news, like a businessman calculating risk. I told myself I was imagining it. Grief changes people. Fear makes everyone awkward. That had to be it, didn't it? Tessa arrived later that afternoon, carrying reusable grocery bags filled with expensive organic food, bone broth, fresh ginger, turmeric supplements, imported herbal tea. She moved around my kitchen with remarkable efficiency, washing vegetables, organizing cabinets, labeling containers.com. "You need anti-inflammatory foods," she explained. "This helps the immune system. This supports healing." She never once asked whether I was hungry, only whether I had eaten enough. There is a difference. At the time, I missed it. That evening, Dashiell arrived. He hugged me longer than either of his siblings. For a moment, I felt genuine relief. Maybe my youngest still knew how to love without conditions. "Whatever you need," he whispered. I mean that. I believed him. I wanted to believe all of them. For the next 4 days, my house felt alive again. Holden woke early every morning and made coffee, black, 1 spoonful of sugar, exactly the way Thomas had liked it. It surprised me. He hadn't remembered that detail in years. Tessa cooked breakfast, lunch, dinner. She cleaned constantly, folded laundry, organized drawers. Everything looked perfect. Dashiell sat beside me during old movies, refilled my water glass, adjusted my blanket, asked whether I was comfortable. From the outside, Anyone would have called them devoted children. Sometimes, I almost did. But kindness doesn't usually feel rehearsed. Real love forgets things. It burns toast. It leaves dishes in the sink because it's too busy worrying about you. This felt polished. Like everyone had studied the same script. Smile here. Hug now. Say I love you. Pause dramatically. Repeat. I hated myself for thinking it. Who doubts their own children while facing cancer? Apparently, someone whose instincts had spent decades balancing ledgers. Because numbers don't lie. People do. On the third day, tiny things started collecting inside my mind. Not enough to accuse anyone, just enough to notice. Holden wandered upstairs 3 different times. Each time he somehow ended up near the hallway closet. The one containing tax returns, insurance papers, property records. Thomas had always kept everything there. When he came back downstairs, he always had some innocent explanation. I was looking for the bathroom. I thought I heard something. I wanted another blanket. Maybe all true. Maybe. Tessa found reasons to pass my bedroom over and over again. Checking windows. Looking for towels. Putting laundry away. Each trip took her directly past my dresser. Past the jewelry box. Past the drawer where my mother's sapphire ring had rested for nearly 40 years. Again, perfectly reasonable. Individually, Dashiell's questions were quieter. More careful. Which somehow made them worse. Have you updated your will? Are your accounts all in one place? If treatment gets complicated, do you have someone with power of attorney? Each question sounded practical, responsible, adult, until I realized something. He hadn't asked once. Whether I was afraid, I didn't say anything. I kept correcting myself internally. They're scared. People act strangely during crises. Stop looking for problems. They're here. That's what matters. I repeated that sentence so many times, it almost became true. That afternoon, Hazel came over after school. Still wearing her school uniform, backpack hanging from one shoulder. She walked straight past everyone else, sat beside me, rested her head against my shoulder. No speeches, no advice, just quiet. After several minutes, she asked, "Grandma, what's your favorite flower?" I smiled. "Daisies. The simple white ones. They've always made me happy." She nodded seriously. "Okay. I'm planting you a whole row in the spring." She didn't ask how much time I had left. She didn't ask about doctors, or money, or paperwork. She asked about flowers. I cried for the first time since my diagnosis. Not because I was frightened anymore. Because someone finally treated me like a person instead of a problem. The 4th evening, I insisted on making dinner myself. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans. Thomas's favorite birthday meal. I wanted one night that felt normal. Just one. The good china came out. Candles. Cloth napkins. For almost half an hour. It worked. People laughed. James Taylor played quietly from the old kitchen radio. For one foolish moment, I believed we might actually survive this together. Then Holden set down his fork. "Mom, we need to discuss your estate." Everything stopped. The forks, the conversation. Even the clock on the wall suddenly seemed louder. Tessa folded her napkin carefully. "We just want everything protected, so you won't have to worry." Dashiell looked directly into his wineglass. "Do you have an updated will?" I swallowed. "No. I've been meaning to update it. I couldn't bring myself to after your father died." Silence. Then something changed. Not gradually. Instantly. Almost like watching masks fall off 3 faces at the same time. Holden stared at me for several long seconds. Then he leaned back in his chair. "Mom, you're telling us you never updated anything after Dad died?" I shook my head. I couldn't. Every time I opened the folder, I closed it again. It felt like admitting he was really gone. He rubbed both hands over his face. Not with sadness, with frustration. Mom, that's unbelievably irresponsible. The word landed harder than I expected. Irresponsible. Not frightened. Not grieving. Not overwhelmed. Irresponsible. Tessa sighed loudly. You've known you weren't getting younger. This should have been handled years ago. I looked at her. I didn't know I was dying 4 days ago. She didn't answer. Instead, she reached for her water glass. Her fingers tapped against it, fast, impatient. Dashiell finally spoke. If something happens suddenly, the probate process could take months. Maybe years. It'll become a nightmare. I looked around the table. Nobody had asked whether treatment would hurt. Nobody had asked whether I was sleeping. Nobody had asked whether I was scared of dying. The conversation had somehow become entirely about paperwork. I'll update everything, I said quietly. When I'm ready. Holden's expression hardened. When you're ready. Mom, you don't have that luxury anymore. The room became very still. Outside, a dog barked somewhere down the street. Inside, only the ticking clock remained. Tessa suddenly pushed her chair back. So what exactly are we doing here? She looked from Holden to Dashiell, then back to me. I canceled meetings. I rearranged clients. I've basically put my entire life on hold. And you haven't even prepared the basics. I blinked. Something inside me, very quietly, shifted. Holden stood too. I took 4 days off work. My biggest client isn't happy. I thought we were coming here to actually deal with something. We are, I answered. I'm dealing with cancer. No, he snapped. You're avoiding reality. The words hung in the room. Avoiding reality. I looked down at the roast chicken. Still warm. Thomas's favorite meal. The candles were burning lower now. Wax pooled around the silver holders. It struck me how strange it was that I had spent the afternoon trying to give my family one final normal dinner, while they had apparently spent it waiting for legal documents. Dashiell finally laughed. One short, bitter laugh. I postponed 3 client meetings. For this? I looked at him. For this? He immediately looked away. I didn't mean. No, I interrupted gently. I think you meant exactly what you said. Nobody apologized. Nobody corrected themselves. Instead, the silence simply stretched longer. Then Tessa spoke again. The softness she'd worn for 4 days disappeared completely. We're not wasting our lives on someone who can't even get her affairs in order. The sentence hit me harder than the diagnosis ever had. Not because it was cruel, because it was honest.com. For the first time in 4 days, someone had stopped performing. She grabbed her purse. I'm leaving. Holden immediately stood. So am I. Dashiell remained seated for another few seconds, looking at the table, looking at his hands. Then he slowly stood too. I didn't stop them. I didn't ask them to stay. I simply remained sitting there, watching 3 adults I'd raised become strangers. Upstairs, suitcases rolled across hardwood floors. Closet doors opened and closed. Zippers, footsteps. The ordinary sounds of people packing. Sounds I'd heard hundreds of times throughout their childhood. Except this time, nobody was leaving for college, or vacation.com, or work. They were leaving their mother. Holden came downstairs first. Suitcase already in hand. You should call an estate attorney tomorrow. Immediately, it'll make everything easier. He sounded exactly like a man recommending a financial advisor. Nothing more. Tessa walked past me without looking up. She adjusted the strap of her handbag, checked her phone, opened the front door. No hug, no goodbye. Dashiell stopped beside my chair. For one tiny moment, I thought he might still choose differently. He opened his mouth, closed it, then quietly followed the others outside. The front door shut. The house fell silent. Not peaceful, empty. The kind of silence that echoes. I remained sitting there, 3 wine glasses still half full, dinner untouched, candles burning themselves out. I don't know how long I stayed there. 5 minutes. Maybe 10. Time felt strange. Then, exactly 20 minutes after the front door closed, my phone rang. Dr. Castellan? I almost ignored it. I honestly believed I had nothing left inside me capable of surviving more bad news. But something made me answer. Eleanor. Her voice sounded different. Urgent. I need you to sit down. I laughed softly. I'm already sitting. That wasn't true. But as she spoke, I slowly slid down the kitchen cabinet until I was sitting on the floor, surrounded by dirty dishes, half-finished dinner, and the life I thought I had lost. Then she said 7 words. Words that changed absolutely everything. There has been a serious mistake. There has been a serious mistake, Dr. Castellan said. For a moment, I genuinely thought she meant the appointment, or the paperwork. Anything except what came next. There was an error in your medical file. I didn't speak. I couldn't. She continued carefully. When we prepared your treatment plan this afternoon, I reviewed your complete pathology report personally, and I discovered that your biopsy results had been matched with another patient's imaging. I frowned. I don't understand. Your scans are yours. The mass is yours. But the biopsy we used to diagnose advanced stage 4 cancer was not. The room seemed to disappear around me. My heartbeat filled the silence. So, what does that mean? It means your actual biopsy came back this afternoon. She paused, then said the sentence that gave me my future back. Eleanor, you have early stage cancer. It is serious, but it is highly treatable. The prognosis is genuinely very good. I'm so sorry. I cannot imagine what these last 4 days have been like for you. Neither could I. After the call ended, I stayed on the kitchen floor, laughing, then crying, then laughing again. Not because anything about cancer was funny, because 20 minutes earlier, 3 of my children had walked out of my house believing I was dying. 20 minutes later, I learned I probably wasn't. Those 2 truths collided inside me so violently. I honestly didn't know which one hurt more. I didn't call them. Not that night. Not the next morning. For the first time in my life, I chose silence over explanation. 2 days later, while putting away laundry, I opened my jewelry box. Something immediately felt wrong. My mother's sapphire ring was gone. The ring she'd worn for almost 40 years. The ring she'd left to me. I searched every drawer, every shelf, every bathroom. Nothing. Then I remembered. Tessa. Walking upstairs. Again and again. Always finding reasons to pass my bedroom. I opened the doorbell camera app. Scrolled back. There she was. Time-stamped the morning after our dinner. She unlocked the front door with the spare key I'd forgotten she still had. Walked inside. Stayed exactly 6 minutes. Then left. Empty. At least visibly. I never confronted her. I didn't need to. Some truths don't require arguments. They simply require attention. That same afternoon, I changed every lock in the house. Quietly. Without telling anyone. A few days later, I sat across from Priya, the attorney who had handled Thomas's estate years earlier. She listened while I told her everything. The diagnosis. The correction. The dinner. The 20 minutes. The missing ring. When I finally finished, she folded her hands. What do you want? Not what should happen. Not what seems fair. Simply, what do you want? I thought for a long time, then answered honestly. I want whatever future I have left to belong to the people who actually wanted me. Not my money. Not my house. Me. Priya nodded once, then slid a blank legal pad toward me. Then let's make sure your future reflects that. The following week, I finally began treatment. Gray Tuesday morning. Cold rain. Chemotherapy infusion room. I'd planned to go alone. Instead, Hazel arrived carrying a worn paperback novel and 2 cups of hot chocolate. You skipped school. I know. You shouldn't have. I wanted to. 3 simple words. I wanted to. Not because anyone expected her. Not because there was something to inherit. Because she wanted her grandmother to feel less alone. She sat beside me for 4 hours. Reading chapters aloud. Stopping occasionally. Too cold. Need another blanket. Want me to get the nurse? Every act of kindness so ordinary, it almost disappeared, which is exactly what real love looks like. Holden texted twice. Hope treatment is going well. Let me know if you need anything. Dashiell called once. For minutes, mostly asking whether insurance was covering everything. Tessa sent an expensive wellness basket. The card wasn't handwritten. It had been printed. I noticed all of it. Not angrily, just, clearly a month later. My new will was finished. The Savannah house, the one Thomas and I had spent 31 years paying off, would belong to Hazel, held in trust until she turned 20-5. My retirement savings would fund scholarships for first-generation college students. In Thomas's name, each of my children would receive a modest inheritance, enough to acknowledge they were still my children, not enough to reward what I'd witnessed. It wasn't revenge. It was accuracy. Love had shown me its shape. Now my will simply matched it. Hazel found out months later. Not from me. From Tessa. She called me sobbing. They really left. They actually walked out. Yes. I'm so sorry, Grandma. I smiled. You have absolutely nothing to apologize for. You never left. She cried harder after that. Sometimes, the people carrying guilt are the only innocent ones in the room. Christmas arrived almost a year after the diagnosis. The first holiday we'd spent together since the night my children walked away. From my dinner table, I cooked the same roasted chicken, used the same china, lit the same candles. Only this time, nothing about the room felt the same. Halfway through dinner, I put my fork down. I need to tell you something. 3 faces turned toward me. I never had stage 4 cancer. Silence. Then confusion. What? Tessa whispered. There was a laboratory error. The biopsy results weren't mine. My actual diagnosis was early stage. The prognosis has always been good. I let those words settle. Then, I added quietly, the phone call came 20 minutes after you left. Nobody spoke. Not immediately. Because all 3 of them knew exactly what those 20 minutes meant. Holden finally cleared his throat. So? Everything changed because of one mistake. I looked at him. No. My medical diagnosis changed because of a mistake. My opinion of my children changed because of 20 minutes. Tessa's eyes filled with tears. You've rewritten your will. Because of that dinner. I rewrote my will because of what happened before the phone rang. You believed I was dying. And before you knew the truth, you decided your time was too valuable to spend with me. Dashiell rubbed both hands together. We were scared. I nodded. I know. But fear doesn't ask about estate lawyers before asking whether your mother is afraid. Fear doesn't criticize paperwork while dinner is still on the table. What I watched wasn't fear. It was calculation. I spent 40 years working with numbers. I know what calculation looks like. Nobody argued. Because nobody could. Then Holden spoke again. So that's it. One terrible night decides everything. I smiled sadly. It wasn't one night. It was 20 minutes. 20 minutes where each of you showed me exactly who you believed I was. A dying woman with unfinished paperwork. Christmas ended quietly. No shouting. No dramatic exits. Just 3 adults leaving a little slower than they had arrived. For the first time, silence wasn't protecting anyone. 3 weeks later, Holden came back alone. No expensive jacket. No confident smile. He looked tired. Older, somehow. "Can we talk?" I invited him inside. We sat at the kitchen table. The same table. The same chairs. The same place where everything had fallen apart. "I keep replaying that dinner," he admitted. "I keep asking myself when I became someone capable of saying those things." I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I waited, because sometimes people need room to hear themselves. Finally, he sighed. "I don't think it happened overnight. I think it happened one missed phone call at a time. One canceled visit. One holiday where work seemed more important. I kept telling myself I'd make time later. And eventually, I forgot how." I looked at my son. For the first time in years, I believed every word he said. "Does that change anything?" He asked quietly. "It changes how I see you, but it doesn't change my will." He lowered his head. "I understand." It was the first conversation we'd had in years that contained no negotiation, no excuses, only truth. Today, I'm sick. Treatment worked. Exactly the way Dr. Castellan promised. Most mornings, I wake up before sunrise.com, make coffee, sit on the wraparound porch Thomas loved so much, and watch the daisies. Hazel kept her promise. That spring, she planted an entire row beside the porch. She knelt in the dirt wearing her school uniform. Mud on her knees. Hair falling into her face, completely unconcerned about ruining her clothes. I watched her from the kitchen window and realized something that changed me forever. Love isn't loud. Love doesn't announce itself. It doesn't perform. It simply shows up. Again, and again, and again. Hazel still visits nearly every Sunday. Sometimes she brings takeout. Sometimes homework. Sometimes absolutely nothing except herself. And somehow, that's always enough. I still see Holden. I still see Tessa. I still see birthdays, Christmas, the occasional phone call. They are still my children. But they are no longer the people I build my future around. Some bridges don't burn. They simply stop being the road you travel every day. Looking back, the thing that stays with me isn't the anger. It isn't even the betrayal. It's the clarity. A clerical mistake gave me something very few people ever receive. The chance to see exactly who the people around me believed I was, when they thought nothing could ever expose them. Most people never get that phone call. Most people spend the rest of their lives believing performances are love. I was lucky enough to learn the difference, so let me leave you with one question. If the people closest to you only reveal their true character when they believe no one is watching, what does that tell you about every other moment you've shared with them? And if this story stayed with you, tell me in the comments. Have you ever discovered who someone truly was in a single moment they never expected to be tested?